Yeah, well, that's the thing about offence, isn't it? When people say they're offended, it's that just because you're offended, it doesn't mean you're right, you know?
All the parties they were having and what all the stuff they were doing. And people were saying, you know, that was the day I couldn't see my mum in hospital, or I couldn't go to my dad's funeral.
A storm of laughter and outrage brews wherever Ricky Gervais speaks. With his razor-sharp wit and unapologetic honesty, he cuts straight through the noise of modern, woke culture, leaving no sacred cow untouched. In a world obsessed with outrage, where every word risks cancellation, Gervais stands firm, turning the chaos into comedy and the absurd into art. His words don't just entertain, they expose. Each joke feels like a spotlight, glaring into the hypocrisy of virtue, signaling and the fragile egos of those desperate to police humor. This is not just stand-up, it's rebellion wrapped in punchlines.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about offence, isn't it? When people say they're offended, it's that just because you're offended, it doesn't mean you're right, you know? It's... offence is about feelings, and feelings are personal. Some people are offended by equality. So what? You know, so you can't second-guess people. If you try and please everyone, you'll please no one.
Ricky Gervais points out that offense is based on individual feelings, which vary greatly from person to person. For example, he notes that some people might even be offended by the concept of equality, a value most would consider positive. This highlights the impossibility of creating content or expressing ideas that will universally please everyone. According to Gervais, feelings are subjective, and trying to predict or control how others react is futile.
With comedy as well, I think you've got to deal with taboos and contentious issues, and sometimes you deal in irony, and some people don't get that, but you know, you can't legislate against stupidity, otherwise you'll be doing nothing, you know, because I'm not doing it for the 200 egos in the room. I'm doing it for the 200 million people watching around who aren't winning awards, who aren't millionaires. And freedom of speech is so important these days.
Freedom of speech plays a crucial role in comedy, and Gervais firmly believes that comedians should not shy away from taboo topics or contentious issues. He argues that comedy should challenge societal norms and explore uncomfortable subjects because humor is a way to address the darker or more complex parts of life. However, this approach is not without its challenges. Gervais explains that irony, often used in comedy, can be misunderstood. Some people may take an ironic statement literally, leading to unnecessary outrage or criticism.
I've reached the age now where I don't care anymore. It's a sin. Not to joke about all the bad things, that's a waste, because that's exactly what we should joke about.
Despite these challenges, Gervais stresses the importance of tackling difficult topics through humor. He views it as a moral duty to joke about bad things, arguing that ignoring them is a missed opportunity for reflection and discussion. For him, comedy is not about catering to the egos of a select audience, but about connecting with a broader public, often by shedding light on universal truths or societal hypocrisies. Humor, he suggests, is a powerful tool to confront and question the world around us, even if it makes some people uncomfortable along the way.
The worst thing is, the in charge do what they want. And you know what, I see all these people saying all the parties they were having and what all the stuff they were doing, and people saying...
Ricky Gervais doesn't hold back when it comes to calling out the hypocrisy of politicians, particularly during crises like the COVID-19 pandemic. He highlights the glaring double standards of those in power, pointing out how they acted irresponsibly while imposing strict rules on everyone else.
You know, that was the day I couldn't see my mum in hospital, or I couldn't go to my dad's funeral. And because the people in charge, the posh, privileged people in charge, were acting like Charlie Sheen. I mean, really rubbing salt in the wound. And as I say, I don't get political, but they're all shit.
For example, Gervais mentions how many politicians were caught attending parties and gatherings during lockdowns, a time when ordinary people were making heartbreaking sacrifices, such as missing their loved ones' funerals or being unable to visit them in hospitals. These actions, Gervais suggests, were a blatant slap in the face to the public, showcasing a lack of empathy and a sense of entitlement among the privileged. By comparing their behavior to that of Charlie Sheen, he humorously underscores how out of touch these leaders are with the struggles of everyday citizens.
Taking went to Eton as a qualification to run the country. I mean, now. So that's why I'm doing this as well, because I've noticed all around, you know,
In addition to their hypocritical actions, Gervais criticizes the broader issue of privilege within the political class, particularly the influence of elite institutions like Eton. This prestigious private school, which costs an astronomical £63,000 a year, has educated a significant number of British prime ministers and other influential figures.
There's a lot of annoyance and frustration, totally justified as well. Misinformation, anger. But I think the next pandemic is going to be like anxiety and depression, you know. God knows how it affects.
Gervais finds it absurd that these politicians, who have lived lives of immense privilege and luxury, often pretend to relate to the working class. They present themselves as champions of the common people, but their backgrounds make it hard to believe they genuinely understand or care about the struggles of ordinary citizens. Gervais emphasizes this disconnect by pointing out how many of these politicians grew up surrounded by wealth and opportunity, spending more on their education than what the average person earns in a year.
I have teenagers who have had their, you know, some of the best years of their life sort of taken away. And college, I didn't go to college to study. You know what I mean? 3 years living at home, doing things on Zoom. That's not my idea. That's not my idea of a college experience.
This disparity between the lives of politicians and the public they claim to represent fuels a growing frustration. While they lecture citizens about tightening their belts and making sacrifices, they themselves live in comfort and luxury. Gervais uses examples such as French President Emmanuel Macron discreetly removing an $80,000 watch during a speech about austerity to highlight this stark hypocrisy. Through his humor and sharp observations, Gervais draws attention to these injustices, making audiences laugh while also encouraging them to think critically about the fairness and integrity of those in power. Ricky Gervais doesn't just make us laugh, he makes us think, pushing boundaries and challenging the world around us with every word. His fearless take on woke culture and canceled culture continues to spark conversations, and there's no telling what he'll tackle next. If you want more moments like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking comedy where nothing is off limits.